Be me? Censure. Feminist sex educator and relationship blogger. Married for 3 years to guy I met in grad school. Always been passionate about consent culture and enthusiastic agreement. Believed strongly in setting boundaries and clear communication. Applied all my professional knowledge to personal relationship. Thought this made us model couple. Progressive. Communicative. Boundary respecting. Everything I preached about in my work. Things started changing about a year into marriage. Began implementing formal consent practices in our relationship. Not just verbal consent, but enthusiastic consent for every aspect of physical intimacy. Read about this in academic papers. Seemed like evolved way to handle intimacy. Told husband we needed to discuss boundaries more explicitly. He seemed confused but agreed. I thought we were fine communicating. Explained. This was about being more intentional. More clear about consent and desires. He nodded. Said he understood. Started creating framework for our intimacy. Rule 1. Must verbally ask before any physical contact. No assuming. No reading body language. Clear verbal consent required. Husband adapted. Started asking, can I kiss you? Can I hold your hand? Can I hug you? Felt good initially. Clear communication. No assumptions. Everything explicit and discussed. Rule 2. Either person can revoke consent at any time for any reason. No explanation needed. This seemed obvious and important. Bodily autonomy was paramount. Husband agreed completely. Of course. That makes sense. Rule 3. Consent must be enthusiastic. Not just yes, but genuine enthusiasm. I guess so. Or okay. Didn't count. Had to really want it. Husband started checking more carefully. Are you sure? Do you really want to? Sometimes felt like too much checking. But reminded myself this was healthy. Rule 4. Must discuss any physical intimacy beforehand. Spontaneity could lead to unclear consent. Better to plan and discuss. Created system where we'd schedule intimate time. Discuss what we both wanted. Agree on boundaries before anything happened. Husband seemed less enthusiastic about this one. Take some of the romance out of it. Explained. Romance was less important than clear consent. He accepted this. Rule 5. Must check in during intimacy. Is this still okay? Do you want to continue? Regular verbal confirmation throughout. Husband complied, but seemed mechanical about it, like going through checklist. Told him that was fine. Better too much communication than too little. Rule 6. Either person can end encounter at any point. No pressure to continue once started. No expectations or obligations. Husband understood this one. That's always been true for us, though. Explained. I was making it more explicit. He nodded quietly. Added more rules over time about specific acts requiring specific consent. About timing and frequency discussions. About emotional state checks before physical intimacy. Are you in right headspace for this? Created actual checklist at one point. Things to discuss before intimacy. Things to confirm during. Things to debrief after. Husband looked at checklist with expression. I couldn't read. This is a lot. Told him consent culture required thorough guess. He didn't argue. Just became quieter. First sign something was wrong. He stopped initiating anything physical. No more spontaneous kisses. No more casual touching. No more initiated intimacy. Waited for me to initiate everything. Asked him about it. You never start anything anymore. He looked at me carefully. I'm following your rules. I don't want to violate your boundaries. Explained he could still initiate. Just had to ask first. I do ask, he said. And you say no a lot. So I stopped asking. That felt unfair. I have right to say no. He nodded immediately. Of course you do. So I'm respecting that. By not putting you in position to say no, realized he'd stopped initiating to avoid rejection. This wasn't what I intended. Told him I wanted him to keep trying. But within the framework we established, he agreed, but didn't change behavior. Still waited for me to initiate everything. When I did initiate, he seemed different. Went through all the verbal checks, asked all the right questions, confirmed consent at each step, but seemed emotionally distant, like performing rather than connecting. Asked him about this. You seem disconnected during intimacy. He thought carefully before answering. I'm focused on following protocol, making sure I do everything right. Hard to be in moment and check boxes simultaneously. That stung. But I defended the system. Clear consent is more important than being in moment. He nodded. You're right. Went back to his phone. Conversation was over. Things continued deteriorating. Our intimate life became infrequent, maybe once every 2 weeks. Used to be several times per week. When it did happen, felt clinical, like going through medical procedure. All the right steps. No genuine connection. Discussed this with feminist friends. They validated my approach. You're setting healthy boundaries. If he's pulling away, that's his fragility. Maybe he preferred unclear consent. But that didn't feel right. He wasn't fighting the rules. He was following them perfectly. Maybe too perfectly. Started noticing other changes. He stopped casual physical affection entirely. No hand on my back when passing. No quick kiss when leaving for work. No cuddling on couch. Asked why. Those all require asking first under your rules. Seemed easier to just not. Felt hurt by this. You can ask for those things. He smiled sadly. I'm tired of asking permission for every touch. For every kiss. For everything. Tried to explain these were different. That casual affection didn't need formal consent. He raised eyebrow. Where's the line? You said all physical contact needs verbal consent. I'm just following what you said. Realized he was technically right. I had said all physical contact. Tried to backtrack. I meant intimate physical contact. He shrugged. You weren't specific about that. So I erred on side of caution. Following your rules exactly. He wasn't being difficult. He was being literal. And it was destroying our physical connection. Brought this up in my therapy session. Therapist asked about our intimate life. Described the rules I'd implemented. The checklist. The protocols. The framework. She listened without comment. Then asked, how often are you intimate now? Told her, every 2 weeks. Maybe, how often before the rules? Several times per week. How do you feel about that change? Admitted I was frustrated. Felt like he wasn't trying anymore. She asked another question. Is he violating any boundaries? No. He followed everything perfectly. Is he being disrespectful? No. Very respectful. Is he pressuring you? No. Never. Then what's the actual problem? Struggled to articulate. He's too compliant. It feels mechanical. There's no passion or spontaneity. She leaned forward. You created system that eliminates passion and spontaneity. Then you're upset. It worked? That observation hit hard. Tried to defend approach. But clear consent is important. She nodded. Consent is crucial. But there's difference between consent culture and bureaucratic checklist. You've created the latter. Asked what she meant. Healthy consent is ongoing communication. Reading each other. Checking in naturally. What you've created is transactional. Every touch requires negotiation that kills intimacy. Sat with that. So? What do I do? She smiled gently. Talk to your husband without rules or framework. Just honest conversation about what's happening between you. Tried to talk to him that night. He was on his laptop, working late. Can we talk about our relationship? He looked worried immediately. Did I do something wrong? That response was telling. He was always worried about breaking rules. No. I want to discuss our intimacy. He closed laptop. Okay. What rules need adjusting? Realized that's how he saw every conversation. About adjusting rules. Not connecting. No rules. I just want to talk about us. He looked genuinely confused. What about us? Asked how he felt about our intimate life. He chose words carefully. I think we've established clear boundaries, and I'm respecting them. Pressed for his actual feelings. But are you happy? The long pause. I'm compliant. That wasn't an answer. That's not what I asked. He sighed heavily. Honestly. No. I'm not happy. But I'm following your rules. So, I don't know what else you want. Asked what would make him happy. He laughed bitterly. To not need permission for every touch. To not have to schedule intimacy. To not have to go through checklist. To just be with my wife. Without framework or protocol, his frustration was clear. But so was mine. Those rules are important for consent? He nodded. I know they're important to you. So I follow them. But they've killed everything spontaneous. Everything natural. Everything that made us us. Felt defensive. So you want to go back to unclear consent? He looked tired. That's not what I said. We never had unclear consent. We communicated fine before all this. But now everything is transaction. Negotiation. Contract. Agreement. No room for organic connection. Asked what he meant by organic. Remember when we first dated, we'd be talking. Moment would happen. Natural progression from conversation to kiss. No verbal negotiation. Just connection. Both reading each other. Both consenting. That's all gone now. Tried to argue nonverbal consent was unclear. He shook his head. It wasn't unclear. We were both present, both aware, both participating. That's consent. Just not the kind you want. This conversation was going nowhere. Both frustrated. Neither understanding other. He went to bed early. I stayed up researching, looking into consent culture criticism, found articles about over-bureaucratization, about killing intimacy with excessive protocol, about difference between safety and control. One article particularly relevant about how excessive consent frameworks can be form of control, making partner constantly seek permission, constantly defer to rulemaker, creating power imbalance. Didn't want to believe that applied to me, but kept reading. Author argued that healthy relationships have implicit consent as baseline, explicit consent for new things or uncertainties, but not for every touch in established relationship. That excessive checking showed lack of trust and created anxious dynamic. Thought about my husband, always asking permission, always worried about violating rules, always focused on protocol over connection. Maybe article had point. Brought this up in Feminist group, explained situation carefully, rules I'd implemented, how husband had adapted, how intimacy had suffered, expected support, got mixed reactions, some validated approach, your right to maintain boundaries. He should appreciate clarity. His discomfort is his problem. Others more critical. Sounds controlling. Are you actually scared of him, or are you using consent framework to maintain power? That question bothered me. Was I scared of husband? No. He'd never been aggressive or pushy. Never violated boundaries. Always been respectful. So why did I need such extensive rules? One group member asked directly, what problem were these rules solving? I thought about it. Making sure consent was always clear. She pressed, was it unclear before? Honestly, no. We'd communicated fine. No violations. No problems. Then why create solution to non-P problem? Didn't have good answer. Another member observed, sounds like you academicized your relationship. Applied theory to something that was working. Now you're upset. Theory doesn't work in practice. That felt accurate, but uncomfortable. Left group chat feeling confused. Maybe I had overthought this. Decided to research more. found studies on sexual satisfaction in long-term relationships. Factors that increase satisfaction: trust, communication, spontaneity, feeling desired, feeling safe, balance of predictability and novelty. Factors that decrease satisfaction: anxiety, excessive monitoring, transactional interactions, performative behavior. Our intimacy hit every negative factor. My husband was anxious about rules, constantly monitoring his behavior. Interactions were transactional. His performance was focused on protocol. No wonder satisfaction dropped. But admitting this meant admitting my framework had damaged our relationship. That was a hard pill to swallow. Talked to sex educator colleague, described my situation, expected her to support my approach. Instead, she asked probing questions. Why did you need these rules? Was there violation or trauma? No. Just wanting to be thorough. Did he resist the rules? No. He complied completely. So, compliant husband, following rules you created and you're upset. He follows them too well. Put that way sounded absurd. She continued gently. Consent culture is about ensuring safety, as not about creating obstacles to intimacy and healthy relationship with respectful partner. Excessive protocol can be harmful. It's like safety equipment. Necessary in dangerous contexts. Cumbersome in safe ones. Asked if she thought my rules were excessive. She nodded. For relationship without history of violations. Yes. They're excessive and they're harming your intimacy. Which means they're counterproductive. Suggested I talk to my husband. Really. Talk without framework about what we both wanted. Decided to try. Waited until weekend when we had time. Can we talk honestly about intimacy? He looked guarded, but agreed. Started carefully. I think maybe my rules have gone too far. He said nothing. Waiting. I was trying to ensure clear consent. But I think I made things too complicated. He nodded slowly. Yeah. You did. Asked what he wanted. He thought for a long time. I want to be able to touch my wife without asking permission every time. Want to kiss you goodbye without negotiation. Want to hold your hand without verbal consent. Want to be intimate without scheduling it. His voice got quieter. I want to feel like you want me. Not like you're agreeing to transaction. Want spontaneity and passion. Want connection. Not protocol. Everything he said made sense, but felt scary to let go of control. What about consent? He looked at me directly. I've always cared about your consent. Before all these rules. I checked in, read your responses, asked if unsure. The rules didn't make me respectful. I already was. They just made everything complicated. That was fair. He had always been respectful. I'd created rules for non-existent problem, tried to explain my thinking. I wanted everything to be clear. No ambiguity. No assumptions. He softened. I understand that impulse. But relationships have ambiguity. That's not a bad thing. We navigated together. Your rules removed all ambiguity, but also removed all intimacy. Asked what he proposed. Trust me. He said simply, trust that I respect you. Trust that I'll check in naturally. Trust that you can tell me no without needing formal framework. That required vulnerability I'd been avoiding. The rules gave me control, made me feel safe, but at cost of connection, agreed to try to let go of some rules. See what happened. We sat on couch that night, just watching TV. Everything felt awkward, both hyper-aware of not touching. Finally, he asked, "Can I put my arm around you?" Started to say he didn't need to ask, then realized he was being cautious. After months of requiring permission, yes. I said. He did carefully. We sat like that. Felt nice. But strange. After so long of having distance, later that week, he kissed me goodbye without asking first. Just natural kiss before leaving for work. I tensed up automatically. He noticed. Pulled back. Sorry. Should I have asked? Realized my own reaction. I trained him to ask. Now my body expected it. No. It's okay. I'm just adjusting. He looked sad. We broke something. Didn't we? Couldn't deny it. Yeah. I think we did. But maybe we can fix it. He didn't look convinced. Over next weeks, we tried to rebuild. He'd initiate small touches. I'd try not to overthink them. Slowly, physical connection returned, but intimacy was still complicated, both nervous, both overthinking. When we were intimate, he kept checking verbally out of habit and caution. I kept giving explicit permission, same habit, but it felt forced. Not natural flow of connection, but transaction. We'd both learned, discussed this after one encounter, both frustrated by mechanical nature. We're both following script. He said, "Can't seem to break out of it." Asked how to break out. Stop thinking so much. Stop treating it like procedure. Just be present with each other. Made sense. But hard to implement. Months of protocol had trained us to think. Check. Confirm instead of feel. Respond. Connect. Made post about this experience. How I'd created rules for intimacy. How they damaged relationship. How we were trying to rebuild. Response was predictably split. Some supportive, "Thank you for honesty. I've done similar thing. Important to talk about this." Others critical. "You're abandoning consent culture. This is dangerous messaging. You're teaching women to drop boundaries." Tried to clarify. Not abandoning consent. Abandoning excessive bureaucracy. There was difference, but nuance was lost in reactions. Fellow sex educator reached out. "Your post was brave. This is problem in our field. We over-theorize consent, make it so complicated that we damage healthy relationships." Asked if she'd seen this often. All the time. Women applying academic frameworks to relationships that don't need them. Then wondering why intimacy suffers, she continued. Consent is simple and healthy relationship. Pay attention to partner. Check in when uncertain. Respect when they say no. That's it. Everything else is anxiety management disguised as consent culture. That observation resonated. My rules were about my anxiety, not about actual consent needs. I've been managing my control issues by controlling our intimacy through framework of consent. Brought this insight to therapy. Therapist agreed immediately. Your rules were about control, not safety. You weren't unsafe with your husband. You were uncomfortable with vulnerability. Asked her to elaborate. Intimacy requires vulnerability, surrendering some control, trusting your partner. Your rules prevented all that, gave you total control, but eliminated vulnerability, which eliminated real intimacy. This was painful to hear, but accurate. I'd been afraid of vulnerability, so I created system to avoid it, called it consent culture. Really was control mechanism. Asked how to move forward. Learn to be uncomfortable. Let go of control gradually. Trust your husband. Accept vulnerability. That's where intimacy lives. Started actively working on this when husband initiated touch. Fought urge to control situation. Let him lead sometimes. Didn't require verbal confirmation. Just stayed present and responsive. It was terrifying initially. Felt out of control. But also more connected. More genuine interaction than months of protocol. Our intimate life slowly improved. Still not back to before. Maybe never would be completely. But moving in right direction. Less scripted. More spontaneous. Less anxious. More connected. One night, things felt different. We were close. Moment happened naturally. No discussion beforehand. No explicit negotiation. Just natural progression. Both present. Both responsive. Afterward, lying together. He said quietly, "That felt like us again. Like before all the rules." Agreed. It had felt natural. Connected. Like relationship. Not transaction, but also felt sad. "I'm sorry," I said. for making everything so complicated. He pulled me closer. I understand why you did it. You were trying to do right thing. Just took it too far. Asked if he'd forgiven me. Nothing to forgive. We were both learning. Now we're learning differently. His generosity made me emotional. I'd spent years controlling our intimacy, making him walk on eggshells, turning connection into procedure, and he was still here. Still trying. Still patient. Realized how lucky I was and how easily I could have lost him if he'd been less patient. Less committed. Less understanding. Many men would have left. When intimacy became bureaucratic, when every touch required permission, when passion died under protocol, started writing about this experience. Not just the mistakes, but the underlying issues, how feminist theory could be misapplied, how consent culture could become controlling, how anxiety could hide behind activism. Response was intense. Some women reached out privately. I've done exactly this. Created so many rules. My partner is frustrated. How did you fix it? Shared what I'd learned. Consent is crucial. But bureaucracy isn't consent. Trust is necessary. Control masquerading as safety damages intimacy. Vulnerability is required for connection. Theory doesn't always translate to practice. Others were angry. You're undermining consent culture. This helps men who want to avoid accountability. You're teaching women to drop boundaries. Tried to explain distinction between necessary boundaries and excessive control, but nuance was hard to convey. Colleague in sex education field invited me to speak on panel about practical application of consent culture. Shared my experience, the rules I created, how they damaged my relationship, how we were rebuilding. Audience was split, some nodding in recognition, others looking uncomfortable or angry. During Q&A, woman asked, "Are you saying consent culture is bad?" Answered carefully, "No. Consent culture is essential, but like any framework, can be misapplied, can become controlling rather than liberating. We need to be honest about that." Another question, how do you distinguish between necessary boundaries and excessive control? Thought about this. Ask yourself, what problem am I solving? If there's history of violations, boundaries make sense. If you're creating rules for theoretical problems, you might be managing anxiety, not ensuring safety. Man in audience raised hand. My girlfriend has similar rules to what you described. How do I tell her they're too much without seeming like I don't respect consent? This was tricky. Answered honestly. Have conversation about impact, not about rules themselves. Talk about how relationship feels. Whether intimacy is suffering, whether rules are helping or hurting, come from place of wanting connection, not avoiding responsibility. He nodded thoughtfully. Panel ended with mixed reactions. Some grateful for honesty. Others concerned about message. Organizer told me later, that was controversial. But necessary conversation. Too many people applying theory badly, damaging their relationships. Then wondering what went wrong, started seeing pattern in messages I received. Women creating elaborate consent frameworks for relationships without violation history. Then frustrated when intimacy suffered. Partners becoming anxious and distant. Connection becoming transactional, all in name of proper consent. One message, particularly heartbreaking. I created rules like yours. My husband followed them perfectly, but stopped initiating anything. Now he says he's not attracted to me anymore. That asking permission for everything made him feel like he was bothering me. We're in therapy, but he's distant. I don't know how to fix what I broke. Responded with what I'd learned, but knew some damage might be permanent. Not every relationship could recover from bureaucratization of intimacy. Husband and I continued rebuilding 6 months after dropping most rules. Things were significantly better, not perfect, but closer to healthy. Still occasionally fell into old patterns. Him asking for unnecessary permission. Me creating many frameworks, but caught ourselves faster. Corrected more quickly. One evening, he brought it up. Do you know what I missed most? Asked what? Feeling desired. When you'd initiate spontaneously before all the rules and scheduling, when it was because you wanted me? Not because it was scheduled time. His words hit hard. Rules had made everything planned. Nothing spontaneous. Nothing driven by desire. Just scheduled. Negotiated encounters. That must have felt terrible. I did desire you. I said, do desire you. He smiled. I know that now. But during all the rules, it felt like obligation. Like you were managing me. Not wanting me. Understood completely. My framework had communicated control. Not desire. Management. Not passion. Asked what helped him feel desired now. When you initiate without overthinking, when you touch me spontaneously, when you seem to want me, not schedule me, sense spontaneity, communicated desire, planning communicated management, started being more intentional about initiating spontaneously, about showing desire, not just agreeing to encounters, but actively wanting them, our relationship continued improving, more natural, less anxious, more connected, less transactional, still maintained consent. Of course, but organically, not bureaucratically, checked in naturally during intimacy, respected when either wasn't feeling it, but without formal framework, just natural communication. Like we'd had, before I complicated things, made final post about experience year after starting this journey, reflected on what I'd learned, consent is absolutely essential, but can be practiced without bureaucracy in healthy relationship with respectful partner. Excessive rules can be harmful. They can mask control as safety, create anxiety rather than security, turn intimacy into transaction. Trust is as important as boundaries. Vulnerability is necessary for connection. Theory doesn't always serve practice. And sometimes best intentions create worst outcomes. Response to post was largely positive. More women than before, sharing similar experiences, grateful for permission to let go of frameworks that weren't working, to trust their partners, to choose connection over control. Still got criticism, still got accused of undermining consent, but felt at peace with message because it was honest about my mistakes and what I'd learned. Better to tell truth and help some people than maintain false narrative and help no one. Current relationship with husband is good, not perfect. No relationship is, but healthy and connected, based on trust and communication. Not rules and frameworks. When asked what I do differently, answer is simple: trust. First, before implementing controls. Communicate naturally, before creating protocols. Address actual problems, not theoretical ones. And remember, intimacy requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires trust. Trust requires letting go of control disguised as safety. That's what I learned by making rules for our intimacy, then watching those rules nearly destroy what we had. Now those rules are gone. Most of them, at least. What remains? Mutual respect, natural communication, organic consent, trust, and vulnerability. Everything else was just my anxiety and control needs, dressed up as feminist theory. That's the truth. Uncomfortable, but necessary to share so others might avoid same mistakes that almost cost me my marriage, and did cost me year of genuine intimacy that we'll never get back. But we're moving forward with wisdom earned through mistakes in relationships stronger for having survived my misguided attempts to perfect something that was already working fine. Sometimes I think about what those rules really were, not laws of fairness or protection, but walls I built against uncertainty, against the messiness of love, and maybe against my own fear of being hurt. Control always felt safer than surrender, until I realized safety without connection isn't living. It's isolation disguised as empowerment. There's this myth that structure makes everything better, that if you systemize intimacy enough, pain can't reach you. But what's the point of avoiding pain if it means avoiding joy? 2. Because love isn't supposed to be risk-free, it's supposed to be real, unpredictable, emotional, sometimes terrifying. And I robbed both of us of that by confusing safety with control and trust with compliance. Now I understand that true consent lives in trust, not checklists. It's in how we read each other's silences, how we care enough to stop when something feels off, and how we choose, over and over again, to be kind without needing a script to tell us how. We're not perfect, but maybe perfection isn't the goal anymore. Maybe being human together. Messu. Flawed. Learning is enough. And if I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be this. Freedom isn't about removing every risk. It's about trusting that love, when it's real, can handle imperfection. That sometimes the most radical act is to stop managing intimacy and start experiencing it. Because consent culture didn't fail me, I failed myself when I turned a philosophy into a fortress. What started as a desire for clarity became obsession with certainty. What started as respect became regulation. And what started as communication became compliance. The hardest lesson wasn't that I was wrong. It was that I was sincere. Every rule came from good intentions. Every framework came from wanting to be ethical, thoughtful, responsible. That's why it took so long to recognize the damage. Bad ideas are easy to reject. Good intentions that create bad outcomes are much harder to confront. For a long time, I wanted someone else to blame. The culture, the books, the academic circles, the online discussions. But the truth was simpler. Nobody forced me to create those rules. Nobody told me to apply them without context. Nobody made me ignore what was happening in front of me. My husband had been telling me for months, not with arguments, not with anger, but with distance, with hesitation, with the sadness in his eyes every time he asked permission for something that used to be natural. I just didn't want to hear it, because hearing it meant accepting that I had confused intellectual certainty with emotional wisdom. There's a difference. You can understand every theory in the world and still misunderstand the person sitting across from you. You can know all the language of healthy relationships and still fail to nurture one. You can be an expert in communication and still forget how to listen. That realization changed more than my marriage. It changed my work. When clients came to me asking for perfect frameworks, perfect boundaries, perfect systems, I stopped offering complicated answers. Instead, I started asking simple questions. Do you trust this person? Do they respect you? Do you feel safe telling them no? Do they listen when you speak? Do they care about your well-being? Those answers mattered more than any checklist, more than any protocol, more than any script. Healthy relationships aren't healthy because they have the most rules. They're healthy because the people inside them care about each other. That sounds obvious now. At the time, it wasn't. I had spent years believing that more structure automatically created better outcomes. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes more structure just creates more distance, more anxiety, more opportunities to stop seeing the human being in front of you. My husband and I still talk about that year occasionally. Usually when we're reflecting on how much we've changed. One night I asked him a question I'd avoided for a long time. Were you ever close to leaving? He was quiet for a while, long enough that I already knew the answer. Finally he nodded. Not because of the rules themselves, because I felt like you stopped seeing me. That hurt more than I expected. He continued, I wasn't your husband anymore. I was participant in system. Every interaction felt evaluated. Every touch felt monitored. I never knew if I was connecting with you or completing requirement. Tears came immediately, because he was right. I had reduced relationship to process, and process had slowly replaced presence. Asked why he stayed. He smiled, because underneath all of it, I knew you were trying to love me. You were just scared. That answer stayed with me. Scared. not controlling, not malicious, not manipulative. Scared. Scared of mistakes. Scared of ambiguity. Scared of vulnerability. Scared of trusting something I couldn't completely control. And fear has a strange way of disguising itself as wisdom. Sometimes fear sounds responsible. Sometimes fear sounds ethical. Sometimes fear sounds intelligent, until you realize it's still fear. Once I understood that, everything became clearer. The opposite of fear wasn't certainty. It was trust. Trust that we could communicate without scripts. Trust that misunderstandings could be resolved. Trust that neither of us needed perfect system to care for each other. Trust that love could survive imperfection. Years later, our relationship looks very different. Not because we found a better framework. Because we stopped searching for one, we pay attention. We talk. We apologize when needed. We check in when something feels off. We respect each other's boundaries. We express desire. We make mistakes. We learn. We keep going. Nothing revolutionary. Nothing academic. Nothing that would make interesting conference presentation. Just two people trying to love each other well. Ironically, that's the lesson I wish I'd understood from beginning. Relationships aren't research projects. They're relationships. People aren't theories. They're people. And intimacy isn't something you optimize. It's something you experience, messily, imperfectly, humanly. If someone reading this recognizes themselves in my story, I'm not saying abandon boundaries. I'm not saying ignore consent. I'm not saying trust people who haven't earned trust. I'm saying ask yourself what problem you're trying to solve. Ask whether your framework is creating connection or replacing it. Ask whether your rules are serving relationship or serving fear. Those questions matter. Sometimes the answer will be more boundaries. Sometimes the answer will be fewer. The important thing is being honest enough to know the difference. I wasn't honest with myself for a long time. Now I try to be. And that honesty saved my marriage. Not because honesty solved everything immediately, but because honesty finally allowed us to address the real problem, not consent, not boundaries, not communication. Fear. Fear hiding behind all those words. Fear pretending to be wisdom. Fear pretending to be safety. Fear pretending to be love. Once I stopped protecting myself from every possible risk, I finally became available for the thing I was trying to protect in the first place. Connection. Real connection. The kind that can't be manufactured, can't be scheduled, can't be guaranteed. Only chosen. Again and again. Every day. That's what my husband and I do now. Choose each other. Not because checklist tells us to, not because protocol requires it, not because framework recommends it, because we want to, and in the end, that choice means more than every rule I ever wrote.